Hi there folks, well, welcome back to my channel, and for this video I'm going to be doing the last book review for my channel for the year 2020. And I have to admit, it was a book that I did find very difficult to read, and not because of the size of the book, but mostly because of the content of what was being dealt with within the novel itself. And that will kind of become clear as I kind of continue with the review. And it is a book that I have just finished. I actually just kind of finished it today, or finished it this evening. So this is why this video is going up a wee bit later today. Because again, just realising, yeah, it's nearly Hogmanay, and I haven't finished the book. I haven't done my last book review, and I haven't done my review video for the year. So it's a bit of a panic trying to get these last two videos done for this year. So before I get on to the actual review itself, a wee bit of housekeeping. If you are enjoying my channel, if you are enjoying my videos, you can click on that subscriber button, click on that notification bell, leave some likes, leave some comments. It's always really appreciated, and it does help the channel to grow. And I will post a link to the channel's coffee.com page in the description bar below, and I will also put it in a pinned comment in the comment section. So the book that I'm going to be trying my best to review for this video is Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov, and you probably do not realise how many takes it has taken just for me to be able to say his last name, because again my Russian pronunciation is terrible. But so it's going to be Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov, who was a Russian-American author. And yeah, and a lot of people probably have heard of the book Lolita and probably have heard of it being in the erotica genre. That's not the genre that I personally put it in. I don't know what genre I would put it in, but I certainly would not put it into erotica, because yeah, it's the relationship between Humbert Humbert, which is the pseudonym that is used by the protagonist and the person who is supposed to be writing this as a kind of pseudo-biography, and his relationship to Lolita, who obviously is who the book is named after, is a questionable relationship, because within the book itself, it very much kind of starts with Humbert's life, kind of being born in Paris, and it's kind of following him from then through his childhood and into his adulthood. And it very much kind of does dwell on, at the start anyway, his relationship to someone called Annabelle. Essentially, it was his first love, but essentially how it was kind of essentially kind of the relationship between the two of them. She dies young, tragically young. I think it's typhus or something she catches, and she dies, and essentially he tries to kind of, or Rosalie suggested that it's because of her dying tragic that he becomes obsessed with girls between the age of 9 and 14, and that is, he kind of refers to girls between that age as nymphettes, and he's obsessed with these kind of nymphettes and girls of this age, and essentially that is how he gets, that's kind of what he's attracted to. And with his relationship with Lolita, when he first meets her, he is 37 and she is 12. So that is kind of essentially why Lolita as a novel is I would say is a difficult read, because again, the actual novel itself is not that long, it's not that thick a novel, it's not that big a novel, but as a read, because of the subject matter, It's kind of, I found it quite grueling and quite a difficult slog of a read to get through, but I was determined I was going to sit and finish it and read it. And with the novel, when he first meets Lolita, he essentially is a lodger in Lolita's mother's house. And when he first sees her, he essentially describes her as being like a reincarnation of Annabelle. So a reincarnation of the girl that he'd fallen in love with as a kid himself, and who he tragically lost. And he actually describes her as being almost like physically identical to Annabelle, and that essentially kind of fuels his obsession with Lolita. It's not just about, so it's almost as if he's trying to use that to justify what he's feeling towards her. That it's, as far as he's concerned, who he is seeing as a reincarnation of the love that he had lost as a child. And it's very much kind of this kind of it's almost this kind of control he's always trying to have over Lolita and over her mother, that he starts kind of trying to think of ways of satisfying this lust that he has, or this kind of attraction that he has. And it actually gets to the point where he actually ends up marrying Lolita's mother in order to be able to stay in the house and to stay close to Lolita and to have as much control as he possibly can. And as a character himself, he is very self-centered, very much focused on himself, and sees himself as being the victim of those around him. That he's the victim of people like Lolita, because it's not his fault that he's attracted to Lolita. It's her fault that that she's essentially this kind of being that has a kind of level of control over him. And that kind of almost becomes a kind of running theme throughout the book itself, that he sees no fault in what he's doing. He sees no kind of issues with what he's doing. He's the victim. He's not at fault. But again, it's almost this kind of narcissistic kind of tendency within Humbert as a character, that he's not doing anything wrong. It's everybody else is doing something wrong. But he also tries to present himself as being this like Hollywood-esque matinee hero, this kind of romantic hero who kind of is charming and suave and has European ways, and is tries to present himself as being this kind of charming figure. And that again plays into the whole kind of aspect of him being an unreliable narrator, that you are sitting reading this novel not sure what you can actually believe or how much you can actually take as actually having happened within the novel itself, because again his views on life, his views on morality, his views on what's going on around him are very, very skewed and very, very dangerous, and are very dangerous. And it is a very kind of warped sense of view. So I think kind of I'd actually found out recently that there's I wouldn't really say a sequel to Lolita, it's more like a companion to the novel Lolita, and it's being written by somebody called Christopher Tyson. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's Tyson. I think that's pronounced Tyson. And essentially it's the book that he is writing is called The Diary of Elle, which essentially is being written from the point of view of Lolita herself. So again, giving, essentially retelling the same story, but very much from her point of view, and giving a different perspective on the events and what's happened, and very much kind of readdressing that balance that you don't really get in Lolita, because throughout most of the book, Lolita herself does not really have that much of a voice. You don't really get her point of view on what's happening to her, or what's taking place. All you really hear from her is complaining and kind of her being a bit bitchy. But when you think about it, this is somebody who is, for most of the book, a teenager. And most teenagers tend to be kind of a bit moody, a bit kind of, they complain, they want to kind of push the boundaries. So it is very much kind of, that is all you hear from her. You don't really hear anything else. So I think the novel Diary of Elle will be a really interesting book to sit and read, and when it does come out, I will be trying to get myself a copy so I can sit and read and try and get the story from her point of view. And I think what is also interesting as well is that Christopher Tyson has said that because he is a victim of abuse himself, and he'd read Lolita and he automatically wanted to hear the side of the story from Lolita herself, with her essentially being a victim of abuse as well. And he wants to hear her story, and that's what led to him writing the Diary of Elle. So I will, again, when that comes out, I will be going down and get myself a copy. And what I also kind of found with Humbert is that Humbert, as a main character, as a protagonist, is he's very much aware of society's views on what he is doing. He's very much aware of society's views on the kind of relationship that he's wanting with Lolita, that he knows that society sees as being wrong and immoral and disturbing, but he essentially tries to justify what he is doing by essentially trying to explain it away and say, oh yeah, it's that there are places elsewhere in the world that allow that kind of relationship, that it's been allowed in the past, in like Greece and Rome, and oh yeah, that again, because it's happened elsewhere, it's happened in the past, oh, it can't be that bad. So it very much does play in that whole kind of narcissistic, self-centred kind of point of view that he seems to have as a character. And he does kind of try and use that to kind of play into the whole kind of idea of him being this romantic hero. But when you actually read it, you realise how disrespectful he is towards women themselves. Because when he marries Lolita's mother, in order to try and kind of have that control over Lolita and be able to kind of have at least some sort of kind of level of connection with her, he's actually really disrespectful to her mother. He is constantly bitching about her. He never really says anything to her face, but he's been keeping diaries and writing down everything that he thinks and feels about his wife, and is very kind of, it's almost as if he's kind of just sees her as just being something in his way that he's only kind of used in order to try and kind of have control over what he actually wants. And he's sort of disgusted by her and doesn't really want her there, and is essentially just using her. And throughout most of it, he actually just refers to her as being his, or he refers to Lolita's mother as just being his, or that his woman. He doesn't really refer to her by her first name. So I think her first name is Charlotte, and I think now and again he refers to her by Charlotte, but a lot of the time it is his or that his woman. And he's kind of very much, and he it's also highlighted the fact that with his first wife, is a very low opinion of her, and again very much sees her as being the reason why they divorced, and why that she ended up kind of running off with someone else. It was always all her fault. Obviously could not have been anything to do with him. And to me, reading it and kind of seeing Humbert as a character, there is very much, to me, a delusion within the character himself, that he obviously cannot see himself as others see him, and is very much just kind of centred on this kind of this romantic, heroic idea that he seems to have of himself, which again pretty much sums up the character. But he does have this kind of need as well, that he kind of wants others to see him as being this romantic, heroic character. He wants others to see him as being charming and intelligent and witty. But a lot of it is very much just a mask, it's a facade, it's a kind of lie that he's created, possible to hide how he actually feels, because he knows how he feels and what he's attracted to is wrong. So it's almost like he has kind of tried to create this facade, this mask, which he's sort of come to believe himself. And it is also the fact that he does kind of lie and manipulate as always around him in order to kind of try and have what he wants, which is Lolita. And it is very much that kind of does play into the whole aspect of the book that does kind of make it an uncomfortable read, but you're still you're wanting to kind of continue reading in order just to kind of get to the end, find out what happens, like how's it all going to play out. And there is very much a kind of cruel streak with him as well as a character, which I kind of found very much was highlighted when Lolita's mother has died, and he goes to pick Lolita up from the summer camp that she's been sent to. And for the first wee while, he doesn't tell Lolita that her mother's dead. He's told her that she's in the hospital, and that they're gonna head to the town that this made up hospital was in order for Lolita to see her mother. And they get to one point where they've stopped off at a petrol station or a gas station, and Lolita demands to be allowed to use the payphone, or in order to try and kind of phone the hospital to talk to her mother. And it's at that point that Humbert essentially just shouts at Lolita, tells her to get into the car. And as they get into the car, he tells her, just matter of fact, kind of just straight out tells her that her mother's dead. Doesn't try to cushion the blow, doesn't kind of sit her down and try and kind of talk through it, just says, oh yeah, by the way, your mum's dead. Yeah, so it's kind of very much, there is that kind of cruel streak within the character. And it's at that point that they actually end up spending about a year just travelling through the States, kind of going from place to place, which, if I'm not mistaken, would actually be classed as being abduction. So it is this point that things begin to kind of get physical between the two of them. And after that, I am trying to be kind of careful with the language that I'm using, because again, it's a very sensitive subject, and it is something that I'm not really wanting to kind of delve too much into, because again, it is a very kind of delicate issue. And but again, is that the relationship between the two of them does develop. And it is very much Humbert tries to remain in control of the relationship and is kind of gaslights Lolita and essentially tries to tell her that if she goes to the police, if she goes to the authorities about what he has been doing to her, that no one would believe her. That they wouldn't believe what she has to tell them, and even if they did, he'd be sent to prison and she would essentially be left to her own devices and left to find her way in the world as a 12-year-old. And essentially is trying to put the fear of God in her in order to be able to kind of keep control of her and to keep her within his grasp. And it's also the fact that during the relationship, he still tries to have that kind of father-daughter aspect to what's going on. And he has been giving her an allowance. And I think at this point they've actually stopped in a town and they're renting a house, and he's sent her to this girls' school, and he's been giving her an allowance every week. But when she's out of the house, he has been going into her room and searching for all the little hiding places that she has and taking the money back, because he's scared that if she is able to hide the money away and save up enough, she'll run away and she'll get away from him. Yeah, so it's kind of, there is that kind of aspect of abuse to what is going on in the book. That it's not just physical, it's very much kind of mental and very kind of toxic and controlling. And yeah, again, this is part of the reason why Lolita as a novel is, which I found it to be a hard read, and why I cannot bring myself to class this as erotic fiction. And it's not until like towards the end of the book, I think it's within the last few chapters of the book itself, when it is pretty much heading straight to the climax of what is going on. Because the book itself, when Humbert is writing it, is when Humbert's supposed to be writing this story, he's actually in prison for murder. So it's kind of essentially, when you're getting to towards the end of the book, you're getting towards the reason why he is there, why he's in jail waiting for a trial for murder. When you're getting towards that climax, and it's only when we're getting towards the end of the book itself that he shows any level of remorse, that he shows any level of understanding that what he has done has been wrong, and that he has essentially destroyed Lolita's life and has robbed her of her childhood. And it's a fleeting moment, and it is very fleeting, but it's there, and that's the only time he shows any level of remorse within the entirety of the book for any of the actions that he has done. So Lolita itself is a book that I would not recommend Lolita as a book for just sitting and reading for an easy read, but it's probably one of those good books that might kind of give an insight into like the thought processes of someone like Humbert, that that might actually kind of give an idea of the darkness and the evil that kind of can exist in someone. And I think so for that reason it is an intriguing read. It's I kind of read that kind of it's a novel that kind of excuse me. It's a novel, yeah, that's my dinner coming back on me. But as a novel, Lolita, I would say, is one of those kind of books that will stay with you after you've finished reading it. That once you have finished the last page and you put it down or you put it back in your shelf, you will be kind of constantly thinking back on it, going, right, okay, and kind of constantly kind of thinking over the events and how it's been written, and just kind of going through it again and again. So again, it's one of those good books that it was an interesting read. It was an intriguing read, not necessarily an enjoyable read. Yes, because I think I have kind of read quite a few books this year that have been quite harrowing in their own ways, quite difficult to read in their own ways. So again, if I'm not too sure if I could say that I could really recommend this book, but it is that I can understand why it is classed as a modern classic. And the edition I do have is the Penguin Modern Classic Edition, and the way that it is written is very much, there's kind of elements of stream of consciousness to the way it has been written. So it very much does kind of shine at least some light onto the psychology of someone like Humbert Humbert, and the fact that that is the name that the character chooses as a pseudonym probably kind of sums up a hell of a lot about the character himself. And yeah, and in all honesty, Lolita probably isn't the cheeriest of books to be ending the year with, but it has definitely been an interesting book to be ending my year with. So, Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov has been the last book that I have read and reviewed for this year, for 2020. And yeah, hopefully next year I might kind of actually try and sit and read some cheerier books, and yeah, maybe not totally depress myself with such kind of harrowing and difficult reads. But then again, I think that's kind of maybe the importance in some books, that some books are not supposed to be fluffy and light. Some books are meant to kind of be hard hitting and kind of worm their way inside and kind of stay there and make you think. So I think kind of what Lolita is one of those books that it's one of those kind of dark kind of gems that kind of gets into you and stays there. So I'm gonna sign off just now before I kind of continue waffling, and yeah, might actually kind of maybe take a couple of days off reading before I kind of start doing anything fresh for next year. And hopefully, with 2020 behind us and a new year about to start, that 2021 will be a better year for all of us, and hopefully there'll be better and brighter things ahead of us in the future. So I'll sign off just now, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye.